The blood on Zara's hands had not been hers, but it might as well have been, because her clan had decided she was dead anyway. She stumbled through the pine forest as twilight turned the world purple and gray, her breath coming in ragged gasps that turned to mist in the cold mountain air. Behind her, miles back now, the drums still echoed in her memory. The death drums, the ones that beat when someone was cast out to die alone in the wilderness. Her crime had been mercy. A human child, lost and crying near the border of their territory, and Zara had given him water and pointed him toward the human settlement instead of killing him as tradition demanded. Someone had seen. Someone always saw. Her legs ached, her stomach was empty, and the gash on her shoulder from where her own brother had cut her with his blade still seeped blood through the torn fabric of her tunic. The mark of death. The wound that said she was no longer kin, no longer clan, no longer anything but meat for the wolves and the crows. The forest grew darker with each passing moment, and Zara knew she had to find shelter soon or freeze. Winter was coming early this year to the mountains, and already frost crunched beneath her boots. She had no supplies, no weapon beyond a small knife she had managed to keep hidden, and no plan beyond walking until her legs gave out. That was when she saw it. A cabin, small and weathered, tucked into a clearing between two massive oaks whose branches formed a canopy overhead. There was no smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows, no sign of life at all. The wood was gray with age and ivy climbed up one side of the structure. An unmarked cabin. No clan symbols, no territorial markers, nothing to indicate who owned it or whether anyone would return. Zara approached cautiously, her ears straining for any sound of movement. Orcs had excellent hearing, better than humans, and right now that was the only advantage she had left. She circled the cabin once, then twice, checking for traps or signs of recent habitation. Nothing. The door hung slightly crooked on its hinges, and when she pushed it open, it creaked like an old woman's bones. Inside was a single room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table, 2 chairs, and a bed frame with a straw mattress that looked ancient but intact. Dust covered everything, and cobwebs stretched across the corners. No one had been here in months, maybe years. Zara stepped inside and closed the door behind her, then immediately collapsed against it, sliding down until she sat on the cold floor. Her body shook, whether from cold or shock or grief she could not tell. Probably all three. She pressed her palm against the wound on her shoulder and felt the wet warmth of blood. It needed to be cleaned and bound, but first she needed to rest. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember how to breathe. But instead of resting, she found herself looking up at the ceiling, at the dark beams that crossed overhead, and words came tumbling out of her mouth. Words she had not spoken since she was a child, before the clan elders had taught her that prayers were for the weak. "I do not know if anyone listens," she whispered, her voice rough and broken. "I do not know if there are gods who care about an orc girl marked for death. But if there is anyone out there who can hear me, please, please do not let me die alone in the dark. I am tired and I am afraid and I do not want to be alone anymore." The words hung in the air, and then there was only silence. Zara closed her eyes and let the tears come hot and bitter against her green skin. Of course no one answered. Why would they? She was nothing, less than nothing. A dead girl still breathing. She must have fallen asleep there on the floor, because when she opened her eyes again, pale morning light was filtering through the gaps in the shutters, and someone was standing in the doorway looking down at her with an expression of complete shock. A human. A man. Young, maybe mid-20s, with brown hair that fell into his eyes and a face that would have been handsome if it was not currently frozen in surprise. He wore a thick wool coat and carried an axe over one shoulder and a pack over the other. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Zara scrambled backward, ignoring the pain that lanced through her shoulder, her hand going to the small knife at her belt. "Stay back," she said, her voice coming out as more of a growl than she intended. The man held up one hand, palm out in a gesture of peace. His eyes were a warm brown, she noticed, and they were looking at her with something that was not quite fear and not quite pity. "Easy," he said quietly. "I am not going to hurt you." "I will hurt you if you come closer," Zara said, though they both knew it was an empty threat. She was in no condition to hurt anyone, and the way she was leaning against the wall for support probably made that obvious. The man's eyes traveled over her, taking in the torn and bloodied clothing, the wound on her shoulder, the exhaustion written in every line of her body. "You are injured," he said, stating the obvious, "and you look like you have not eaten in days." "What is it to you?" Zara snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. The truth was she was too tired to maintain proper hostility, and this human did not seem immediately threatening. He had not raised his axe or called for help or done any of the things she would have expected. "This is my cabin," the man said, still speaking in that same calm, quiet tone. "I have been away for a few weeks visiting my sister in the valley. I did not expect to find anyone here, especially not." He trailed off, clearly uncertain how to finish that sentence. "Especially not an orc," Zara finished for him, her voice bitter. "You can say it. I know what I am." Something flickered across the man's face, an emotion she could not quite read. "Especially not someone who looks like they have been through hell," he said instead. "Look, I am not going to pretend this is not strange, but you are obviously in trouble. Do you need help?" Zara wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. A human offering help to an orc. It went against everything both their peoples believed in. Humans and orcs had been enemies for generations, fighting over territory and resources and old grievances no one could even remember the origins of anymore. Kindness between them was not just unusual, it was dangerous. But she was so tired, and the wound in her shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, and the smell of bread coming from the man's pack made her stomach clench with hunger so intense it was painful. "Why would you help me?" she asked, genuinely confused. The man was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Then he set his axe down against the wall and shrugged off his pack. "My name is Isaac Everett," he said, "and I suppose I am helping you because you look like you need it, and because my mother always said that kindness costs nothing. May I come in? This is my cabin after all." Despite everything, Zara felt a small, startled laugh escape her. The situation was so bizarre that humor was the only sane response. "I am not exactly in a position to stop you," she admitted. "My name is Zara, no family name anymore. They took that when they marked me." Isaac's expression grew serious. "Marked you? What does that mean?" "It means I am supposed to be dead," Zara said flatly. "My clan cast me out 3 days ago. The wound on my shoulder is the death mark. I am no longer one of them, and if they find me alive, they will finish what they started." She watched Isaac's face carefully as she said this, waiting for the moment when he would realize that helping her was not just kind but dangerous. That sheltering an outcast orc could bring her entire clan down on him if they decided to track her. But instead of fear or anger, his expression shifted to something that looked almost like sadness. 3 days in the mountains with no supplies and an infected wound," he said quietly, his eyes going to her shoulder. "You should be dead." "I know," Zara said. "I keep waiting for it, but I am still here." Isaac was silent for another moment, then he seemed to come to some kind of decision. "Well, since you are still here, we should probably do something about that shoulder before infection kills you anyway." I have medical supplies in my pack. Will you let me help you?" Every instinct Zara had screamed at her to refuse, to run, to maintain the proud independence that had been drilled into her since childhood. Orcs did not accept help from humans. Orcs did not show weakness. But she was already cast out, already marked for death, and pride seemed like a stupid thing to die for when she had fought so hard to stay alive this long. "Yes," she said quietly, "I will let you help me." Isaac nodded and moved slowly into the cabin, giving her plenty of space. He set his pack on the table and began pulling out supplies. A water skin, a cloth, a small bottle of something clear that was probably alcohol, bandages, and a needle and thread. Zara's stomach sank at the sight of the needle. The wound would need stitches. Of course it would. "This is going to hurt," Isaac said, not unkindly. "Do you want something to bite down on?" Zara shook her head. "I have had worse." It was not quite true, but it was close enough. Isaac brought his supplies over and knelt beside her, moving slowly and telegraphing his intentions clearly. "I need to remove your tunic to see the wound properly," he said. "Is that all right?" The question surprised her. Most humans would not have asked permission. Most orcs would not have either, for that matter. "Yes," she said, and with his help, she managed to peel the blood-stained fabric away from her shoulder. The wound looked bad, she knew. The cut was deep and jagged, designed to scar, designed to mark her permanently. The edges were red and swollen, and it smelled faintly of infection. Isaac's jaw tightened when he saw it, but he did not flinch away. "I am going to clean it first," he said. "This is going to sting." He was not lying. When the alcohol hit the open wound, Zara had to bite down on her lip hard enough to draw blood to keep from crying out. Her tusks, small as they were, dug into her lower lip, and she tasted copper. Isaac worked quickly and efficiently, his hands steady and sure, and Zara found herself wondering where a human living alone in a mountain cabin had learned field medicine. "You have done this before," she observed through gritted teeth. "I was a soldier," Isaac said, not looking up from his work. 5 years on the border. I saw a lot of wounds, stitched up a lot of men. After I left the service, I came up here to get away from all that. A soldier." That explained the cabin's location, far from any settlement. That explained the axe and the wariness in his eyes when he had first seen her. He had probably fought against orcs during his service, probably killed some of them. "Why did you leave?" Zara asked, partly to distract herself from the pain and partly because she was genuinely curious. Isaac was quiet for a long moment, wiping away blood and dirt with careful strokes. "I got tired of killing people I did not know over reasons I did not understand," he said finally. "The war between our peoples has been going on so long that no one even remembers why it started. We fight because our fathers fought, and their fathers before them. I wanted something different, something quieter." "And then an orc broke into your cabin and ruined your quiet," Zara said, managing a weak attempt at humor. Isaac's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Life has a sense of irony, I suppose." He reached for the needle and thread. "This is the worst part. Try to hold still." The stitches were agony, each one a small explosion of pain as the needle pierced her flesh and pulled it back together. Zara focused on breathing, on counting each stitch, on anything but the sensation of being sewn back together like a torn garment. Isaac worked methodically, his hands gentle despite the brutal nature of the task, and when he finally tied off the last stitch and sat back, Zara felt dizzy with relief. "Done," Isaac said quietly. He wrapped clean bandages around her shoulder, securing them firmly but not too tight. "You need rest and food and clean water. The infection is not too advanced yet, but we need to watch it carefully. I have some herbs that should help." "Why are you doing this?" Zara asked again, because she still could not quite understand it. You were a soldier. You fought my people. Why help me now? Isaac met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something deep and complicated in his gaze. Because you are not my people, he said simply. You are a person, and you came to my door asking for help. What kind of man would I be if I turned you away? The words hit Zara harder than they should have, settling somewhere in her chest and making it difficult to breathe. She had been called many things in her life: warrior, outcast, traitor. But person, said with such simple conviction as though it were obvious and undeniable, that was new. Thank you, she said, the words feeling strange and formal in her mouth. Orcs did not thank each other often. Gratitude was shown through action, not words, but this was different. This was a debt she did not know how to repay. You are welcome, Isaac said. He stood and went to his pack, pulling out a loaf of bread and some dried meat. Here, eat slowly. Your stomach is probably empty enough that too much too fast will make you sick. Zara took the food with trembling hands and forced herself to eat in small bites, though every instinct screamed at her to devour it all at once. The bread was hearty and filling, and the meat was salty and good. Isaac watched her for a moment, then turned to the fireplace and began building a fire from the wood stacked beside it. Soon warmth began to spread through the small cabin, and Zara felt her body start to relax for the first time in days. The combination of food, warmth, and the knowledge that her wound was properly treated created a sense of safety she had not expected to feel again. You can use the bed, Isaac said, not looking at her as he poked at the growing fire. I will sleep on the floor tonight. You need proper rest. I cannot take your bed, Zara protested. This is your home. I am the intruder. You are an injured guest, Isaac corrected, and I have slept in worse places than a clean floor. Do not argue with me. You look like you are about to fall over. He was right, of course. Now that the immediate crisis was over, exhaustion was crashing over her in waves. Her eyes felt heavy and her body ached everywhere. Just for tonight, she said, too tired to argue properly. Tomorrow I will leave and find somewhere else to go. Isaac glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. In your condition, you can barely stand. You are not going anywhere for at least a few days, maybe longer. That wound needs time to heal, and you need time to recover your strength. I cannot stay here, Zara said, even though part of her desperately wanted to. It is not safe for you. If my clan tracks me, if your clan tracks you, we will deal with it then, Isaac interrupted. But right now, you need to rest. We can argue about the future tomorrow. There was a firmness in his voice that left no room for argument, and Zara was too exhausted to fight anymore. She finished her small meal, then made her way to the bed, every movement sending fresh pain through her shoulder. The straw mattress was lumpy and old, but it felt like luxury after 3 nights on the cold ground. She lay down carefully, favoring her injured shoulder, and pulled the thin blanket over herself. Across the room, Isaac was settling on the floor with his coat as a pillow and a spare blanket from his pack. The fire crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Isaac, Zara said quietly into the darkness. Yes. If I start to die in the night from fever or infection, do not try to save me. Just let me go quietly. There was a long pause, and when Isaac spoke again, his voice was firm. I did not spend an hour stitching you back together just to let you die in your sleep. If you start to take a turn for the worse, I am going to do everything I can to keep you alive. Get used to the idea. Despite everything, Zara felt her lips curve into a small smile. You are stubborn. I have been told that before, Isaac said, and she could hear the smile in his voice too. Go to sleep, Zara. You are safe here. Safe. It was such a strange word, and Zara was not sure she believed it. But as sleep pulled her down into darkness, she found herself hoping that maybe, Just for tonight, it could be true. She woke several times during the night, disoriented and afraid, her heart pounding as she tried to remember where she was. Each time, she would see the dying embers of the fire, hear the quiet sound of Isaac's breathing from across the room, and remember the cabin, the human who had helped her, the fragile safety of these walls. By morning, her fever had indeed started to climb. She woke to find Isaac kneeling beside the bed with a cool cloth and a concerned expression. "Your wound is fighting the infection," he explained as he pressed the cloth to her forehead. "This is normal, but we need to keep the fever down and make sure you drink plenty of water." The next 2 days passed in a haze of fever dreams and pain. Isaac tended her with surprising patience, changing her bandages, bringing her water and thin broth, keeping the fever at bay with cool cloths and herbs he brewed into a bitter tea. Zara drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes forgetting where she was, sometimes calling out in her sleep in the Orcish language Isaac could not understand. During one of her more lucid moments, she found him sitting beside the bed, whittling a piece of wood with a small knife. "You do not have to stay with me," she said, her voice hoarse. "I am sure you have other things to do." "Probably," Isaac agreed, not looking up from his work. "But none of them are more important than making sure you do not die in my bed. That would be terrible for the cabin's reputation." The joke was so unexpected that Zara actually laughed, though it came out more as a weak cough. "Your sense of humor is strange." "I have been alone on this mountain for too long," Isaac said with a slight smile. "I forget how to talk to people properly. How long have you lived here?" Zara asked. 2 years, Isaac said. "After I left the army, I wanted to be somewhere far from everything, somewhere I could think. This cabin belonged to my grandfather originally. He used to come up here to hunt. When he died, he left it to me. Do you get lonely?" The question was more personal than Zara had intended, but the fever made her less careful with her words. Isaac considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but lonely is better than being surrounded by people and feeling empty. I had enough of that in the army." He set down his whittling and looked at her directly. "What about you? You said your clan cast you out. What did you do to deserve that?" Zara closed her eyes, the memory washing over her. "I showed mercy to a human child," she said quietly. "He was lost near our territory, maybe 5 or 6 years old, crying for his mother. I should have killed him according to clan law. Any human in our territory is an enemy, but I could not do it. I gave him water and pointed him toward the nearest settlement. Someone saw me and reported it to the elders. They cast you out for showing mercy to a child." Isaac's voice was tight with anger, not at her but at the injustice of it. "Mercy is weakness in my clan," Zara said, "and weakness is death. They could not allow me to live after such a betrayal. My own brother gave me the death mark. He did not want to do it, I could see it in his eyes, but he had no choice. Refuse and he would be marked too." Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "I am sorry," he said finally. "That is a terrible thing to go through." "It is done now," Zara said, though the words still hurt. "I am no longer who I was. I have to figure out who I am now." "You are still Zara," Isaac said gently. "That has not changed. The rest is just details." It was such a simple statement, but it settled something in Zara's chest. She had been so caught up in what she had lost her clan, her identity, her place in the world that she had not stopped to consider what remained. Herself, her choices, her ability to decide what came next. "Thank you," she said again, meaning it even more than the first time. "Rest," Isaac said. "The fever should break by tomorrow if we are lucky." He was right. By the 3rd morning, Zara woke clear-headed and significantly less feverish. Her shoulders still ached, but the sharp, burning pain of infection had faded to a dull throb. She sat up carefully and found Isaac at the table, eating a simple breakfast of eggs and bread. "You are awake," he said, looking up. "And you look much better. How do you feel?" "Like I was trampled by a bear and then put back together wrong," Zara said honestly. "But better than yesterday." Isaac laughed, a warm sound that filled the small cabin. "That is a good sign. Are you hungry? I have eggs." Zara's stomach answered for her with a loud growl, and Isaac took that as a yes. He prepared a plate for her and she ate slowly, savoring every bite. Real food, not just broth and bread, tasted like a miracle. "What do you do up here all alone?" Zara asked between bites. "How do you spend your days?" "I chop wood, hunt, fish in the stream when it is not frozen," Isaac said. "I read when I have books. I think a lot. Sometimes I trade in the village down the mountain for supplies, but not often. Mostly I try to live simply and figure out what I want from the rest of my life." "Have you figured it out yet?" Zara asked. Isaac gave her a rueful smile. "Not even close, but I have time. Or I thought I did, until a wounded orc appeared in my cabin and complicated everything." "I can leave," Zara said, though the thought of going back out into the wilderness made her chest tighten with fear. "I have already imposed on your kindness too much." "Stop saying that," Isaac said, his tone a mixture of exasperation and fondness. "You are not an imposition. You are a guest who needed help. There is a difference." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "Besides, I think maybe you showing up here was not entirely an accident." Zara raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? You said you prayed," Isaac reminded her. "That first night when I found you, you prayed not to die alone in the dark. And then the next morning I came home. Maybe someone was listening after all." The thought sent a strange shiver through Zara. She had been raised to believe in strength and steel, not prayers and providence. But she could not deny the timing was remarkable. If Isaac had come home even a day later, she might have been too far gone to save. "I do not know what I believe anymore," she admitted. "Everything I was taught, everything I thought was true, it all turned out to be lies, or at least not the whole truth." "Then you get to decide for yourself what is true now," Isaac said. "That is terrifying but also kind of wonderful. You get to build a new life from scratch, based on what you believe, not what someone told you to believe." Zara looked at him, this human who had shown her more kindness in 3 days than her own clan had in years, and felt something shift inside her. A possibility she had not dared to consider before. Maybe being cast out was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something else entirely. Over the next week, Zara slowly regained her strength. Isaac changed her bandages daily, and the wound began to heal, the angry red fading to pink and then to the pale scar tissue that would mark her permanently. She started helping around the cabin, small tasks at first, washing dishes, folding blankets, organizing supplies. Isaac protested that she should rest, but Zara needed to feel useful, needed to earn her place rather than simply accept charity. "You are stubborn too," Isaac observed one afternoon as she insisted on helping him sort through a pile of firewood, separating the good pieces from the ones that were too damp or rotten. "I was raised to be," Zara said. "Stubbornness keeps you alive in the mountains." They fell into an easy routine, working together during the day and sharing meals by the fire at night. Isaac taught her how to fish in the cold stream that ran behind the cabin, and Zara taught him some of the orcish methods for preserving meat that would keep it edible through the worst of winter. They talked about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their fears, their dreams for the future. Zara learned that Isaac had grown up on a small farm, the youngest of 4 children, and that he had joined the army at 18 to escape the crushing boredom of rural life. He had seen terrible things during his service, things he did not like to talk about, and when his enlistment ended, He had known he could not go back to the farm or to the person he had been before. Isaac learned that Zara had been training to be a warrior since she was old enough to hold a blade, that she had never known her father because he died in a raid before she was born, that her mother had been stern but loving in her own way until Zara's act of mercy made her a stranger. He learned that Zara loved the mountains, the way they looked in the early morning light, and that she had always secretly wondered what it would be like to live somewhere different, somewhere she could be something other than a weapon. "You could be that now," Isaac said one evening as they sat by the fire, both of them wrapped in blankets against the cold. The first real snow had started to fall outside, soft and silent. "You could be anything you want. No one is here to tell you otherwise." "It is not that simple," Zara said. "I am an orc. Your people hate us and my people have cast me out. Where could I possibly go where I would be welcome?" "You are welcome here," Isaac said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Zara looked at him, at this kind, lonely man who had saved her life and asked nothing in return, and felt her heart do something complicated and terrifying. "Isaac, I cannot," she started, but he held up a hand. "I am not asking you to make any decisions," he said quickly. "I am just saying that if you want to stay, if you need a place to be while you figure things out, my door is open. That is all." But it was not all, and they both knew it. Something had been growing between them during these weeks together. Something neither of them had acknowledged out loud, but that colored every interaction, every shared glance, every accidental touch. Zara had felt it when Isaac's hand lingered on her shoulder as he changed her bandages. Isaac had felt it when Zara laughed at one of his jokes, her whole face lighting up in a way that made his chest ache. They were both too afraid to name it, too aware of all the reasons it was impossible. But the feeling remained, growing stronger with each passing day. Winter settled over the mountain in earnest, and Zara found herself grateful for the warmth and safety of the cabin. She knew she should be making plans to leave, to find some way to build a life on her own, but the thought of leaving felt wrong in a way she could not articulate. She told herself it was just because she was not fully healed yet, that once spring came she would go. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was not staying for the safety or the shelter. She was staying for him. One night, about a month after she had first stumbled into the cabin, Zara woke from a nightmare gasping and disoriented. She had been dreaming of the death drums again, of her brother's blade cutting into her shoulder, of being alone in the dark. Her heart hammered in her chest, and sweat dampened her skin despite the cold air. "Zara." Isaac's voice came from across the room, thick with sleep. He had gone back to sleeping on the floor after she insisted repeatedly that it was not right for him to be uncomfortable in his own home. "Are you all right? Just a dream," Zara said, trying to steady her breathing. "I am sorry I woke you." She heard movement, and then Isaac was beside the bed, his face concerned in the dim light from the banked fire. "Do you want to talk about it?" Zara shook her head, then reconsidered. "Maybe talking would help. I keep dreaming about the night they marked me," she admitted. "I dream that I am running through the forest, and no matter how far I go, I can still hear the drums. And I know that I am going to die alone and afraid, and there is nothing I can do to stop it." Isaac was quiet for a moment, then he did something that surprised both of them. He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and calloused against hers. "You are not alone," he said firmly, "and you are not going to die. You survived. You made it here. You are safe." Zara looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between his skin and hers, and felt tears prick at her eyes. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. "After everything our peoples have done to each other, why do you treat me like I matter?" "Because you do matter," Isaac said, his voice intense. "You matter to me. I know we have only known each other a short time, and I know this whole situation is strange and complicated, but you matter to me, Zara. You matter more than you probably should." The words hit Zara like a physical blow, stealing her breath. She looked up at Isaac's face, at the raw honesty in his eyes, and knew that he meant it. He cared about her. This human man who had every reason to hate her, to fear her, to turn her away, cared about her. "You matter to me too," she said, the admission feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I do not know what that means or what we are supposed to do about it, but you matter to me, Isaac." They sat there in the darkness, hands clasped, both of them aware that they had crossed some invisible line but neither sure where it led. Finally, Isaac spoke. "We do not have to figure everything out tonight," he said gently. "We just have to get through tonight. Then tomorrow we will get through that too, one day at a time." Zara nodded, feeling some of the tension leave her body. "One day at a time," she repeated. "I can do that." Isaac squeezed her hand once more, then let go and returned to his makeshift bed on the floor. "Try to get some rest," he said. "I am right here if you need me." "Thank you," Zara whispered into the darkness, and this time when she closed her eyes the nightmares stayed away. The winter deepened, and with it, so did the connection between Zara and Isaac. They moved around each other with increasing ease, learning each other's habits and preferences. Isaac learned that Zara liked her tea strong and her meat rare, that she hummed while she worked, that she was afraid of thunder but would never admit it out loud. Zara learned that Isaac talked to himself when he was concentrating, that he had a scar on his left side from a sword wound that still ached in cold weather, that he was gentle with animals and patient with everything except himself. They also learned to communicate in the silences between words, in the way Zara would hand Isaac his coat before he went out to chop wood, in the way Isaac would set aside the best portions of meat for her at dinner, in the thousand small kindnesses that said more than any declaration could. But they also learned the weight of unspoken feelings, the way desire could turn the air thick and charged, the careful dance of two people who wanted something they were afraid to reach for. There were moments when their eyes would meet across the cabin, and the world would narrow to just the two of them. Moments when accidental touches would linger just a heartbeat too long. Moments when Zara would catch Isaac looking at her with an expression that made her stomach flip. Neither of them acted on it. The reasons were too numerous, too weighty. Zara was still healing, still figuring out who she was outside her clan. Isaac was trying to give her space to process everything she had been through. And beyond that, there was the fundamental impossibility of their situation. A human and an orc. It was forbidden, taboo, dangerous. If anyone found out, the consequences could be severe for both of them. But feelings, Zara was discovering, did not care much about logic or consequences. The turning point came on a cold afternoon in midwinter when Isaac returned from hunting with news that made both their faces pale. He had seen signs of orcs in the forest, tracks and camp remnants, maybe a day or two old. They were searching for something, or someone. "They might not be looking for me," Zara said, but she did not sound convinced. "It could be a hunting party or a patrol. Or it could be your clan tracking you," Isaac said bluntly. "We need to be prepared for that possibility." Zara's hands clenched into fists. "If they find me here, they will kill me, and they will probably kill you too for harboring me. Isaac, I have to leave. I have to lead them away from here." "No," Isaac said, his voice firm. "We do not even know if they are looking for you. And if they are, running now while you are alone would be suicide. At least here you have shelter and help." "I will not let them hurt you because of me," Zara said, her voice rising. "You have done enough. You saved my life. I will not repay that by bringing death to your door." "Then we will both be ready if they come," Isaac said. "I was a soldier, remember. I know how to defend a position, and you are a trained warrior. Together we have a better chance than either of us would alone." They stared at each other across the cabin, both stubborn, both afraid, both unwilling to back down. Finally, Zara's shoulders sagged. "I do not want to leave," she admitted quietly. "I know I should, but I do not want to." "Then stay," Isaac said, moving closer. "Stay and let me help you." "That is what people do when they care about each other. They help." "Is that what we are?" Zara asked, looking up at him. "People who care about each other." Isaac reached out and cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing along her cheekbone. The gesture was so tender that Zara felt her breath catch. "I think we might be more than that," he said quietly, "if we are brave enough to admit it." Zara leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "I am not sure I know how to be brave about this," she whispered. "I know how to be brave in battle. I know how to face death. But this terrifies me." "Me too," Isaac admitted, "but maybe we can be terrified together." He leaned down, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and when she did not, he kissed her. It was gentle and questioning, a request rather than a demand. And Zara found herself responding without thinking, her hands coming up to grip his shirt. The kiss deepened, and for a moment, nothing else existed except the two of them and the overwhelming rightness of finally acknowledging what had been building between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I am in love with you," he said, the words tumbling out. "I know it is fast, and I know it is complicated, and I know there are 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea, but I am in love with you, Zara. I think I have been since the moment I found you praying in my cabin." Zara felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were not sad tears. "I love you too," she said, her voice breaking. "I do not know when it happened or how, but I love you, Isaac, and you are right, it is terrifying." Isaac laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. "Terrifying but worth it." "Yes," Zara said, smiling through her tears. "Definitely worth it." They held each other for a long moment, both of them aware that nothing about their situation had actually changed. The danger was still out there. Her clan might still be looking for her. The world would still see their love as wrong. But for right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. They had each other, and that was enough. Over the next few days, they prepared the cabin as best they could for a potential attack. Isaac reinforced the door and shutters, and they stockpiled supplies in case they needed to withstand a siege. Zara taught Isaac some basic tactics for fighting orcs, how they moved and fought, what to watch for. They took turns keeping watch at night, neither of them willing to be caught off guard. But as days turned into a week, and then 2 with no sign of the orc search party, they began to hope that maybe, just maybe, Zara's clan had given up looking for her. Maybe they had decided she was already dead and not worth the effort of tracking down. Maybe they had more important things to worry about. The hope proved false on a bitter cold morning when Zara woke to the sound of voices outside the cabin. Orcish voices, speaking in the harsh, guttural language of her people. Her blood went cold, and she was on her feet instantly, grabbing her knife and moving to where Isaac was already awake and arming himself with his axe and an old sword he had kept from his army days. "How many?" Isaac whispered. Zara listened carefully, her ears picking apart the different voices. "3, maybe 4, she whispered back. "They are discussing whether anyone is home. They must have seen the smoke from the chimney." "What do we do?" Before Zara could answer, a fist pounded on the door. "Zara," a voice called out in Orcish, "we know you are in there. Come out and face your judgment." Zara's stomach dropped. She recognized that voice. Crag, one of the clan's senior warriors and her brother's closest friend. If he was here, this was not a coincidence. They had tracked her deliberately. "Zara, we can wait you out," Crag continued. "Or we can burn the cabin down with you in it. Either way, you die today. Make it easy on yourself and come out." Isaac looked at her, his jaw set. "What is he saying?" "He wants me to come out and die," Zara translated. "He says they will burn the cabin if I do not." "Then we fight," Isaac said immediately. "We defend this place." "Isaac, they are trained warriors, so am I," Isaac interrupted. "And so are you. We have the advantage of position and shelter. We can do this." Zara looked at him, at this brave, stubborn man who was willing to fight impossible odds for her, and felt love surge through her so strongly it almost hurt. "Together then," she said. "Together," Isaac agreed. Zara moved to the door and called out in Orcish, "I am not coming out, Crag. I have done nothing that deserves death. Leave me alone." There was a moment of silence, and then Crag laughed, a harsh sound. "You showed mercy to a human child. You broke the most sacred law of the clan. The elders declared you dead, and dead you will be. If you want to die in that cabin with your human pet, so be it. We will burn you both." "Pet." The word made Zara's blood boil. "The human has a name," she shouted back. "And he has more honor in one finger than the entire clan has combined. If you want me, you will have to come through him first." Another pause, and this time she heard low conversation she could not quite make out. Then Crag spoke again. "Very well. We offer you a chance, human. Send out the traitor and we will spare your life. You do not have to die for her mistakes." Isaac moved to the door and called out in common speech, which at least some orcs could understand. "I will not send anyone out to die. If you want her, you will have to go through me. And I promise you, I will make you regret trying." "So be it," Crag said, and there was finality in his voice. "Burn it down." What followed was chaos. The orcs tried to set fire to the cabin, but the wood was damp from winter snow and did not catch easily. While they were occupied with that, Isaac threw open the door and charged out, taking them by surprise. Zara was right behind him, and together they fought with a desperation born of having everything to lose. Isaac moved with the efficiency of a trained soldier, his sword and axe working in tandem to keep the orcs at bay. Zara fought with the fury of someone defending the only home she had left, her knife flashing as she parried and struck. The orcs were skilled, but they had not expected such fierce resistance, and the element of surprise worked in favor of the cabin's defenders. The fight was brutal and fast. Zara managed to wound one of the orcs badly enough that he retreated, clutching a bleeding leg. Isaac took down another with a well-placed strike that sent the orc sprawling in the snow. But Crag was the real threat, larger and more experienced than the others, and he focused his attention on Zara with single-minded intensity. "You could have been great," Crag snarled as their blades clashed. "You could have been a warrior of legend. Instead, you threw it all away for a moment of weakness." "It was not weakness," Zara gasped, blocking another strike. "It was humanity, something our clan has forgotten." "Humanity is for humans," Crag spat. "We are orcs, we are warriors, we survive by being strong." "You survive by being cruel," Zara shot back. "There is a difference." Crag roared and lunged at her with renewed fury, but Zara was ready. She sidestepped his attack and brought her knife up in a vicious arc that caught him across the arm. He howled in pain and rage, but before he could retaliate, Isaac was there, his sword leveled at Crag's throat. "Enough," Isaac said, his voice deadly calm. "Take your wounded and leave. This is your only warning." Crag looked between Isaac and Zara, his expression a mixture of fury and something that might have been respect. "This is not over," he said in heavily accented common speech. "The clan does not forget." "Neither do I," Zara said quietly. "Go, Crag. Tell the elders that I am alive and I intend to stay that way. Tell them that I have found something worth fighting for, and if they send anyone else after me, I will not be so merciful." Crag held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded curtly. He gestured to his remaining warriors, and together they retreated into the forest, leaving a trail of blood in the snow. Zara and Isaac watched until they were out of sight, neither of them lowering their weapons until they were certain the threat had passed. When the forest was silent again, Isaac turned to Zara. "Are you hurt?" "Just bruises," Zara said, checking herself over. "You?" "Same." Isaac looked at the cabin, at the scorch marks where the orcs had tried to start a fire, and let out a long breath. "That was closer than I would have liked." "They will not come back," Zara said with certainty. "Crag saw that we are willing to fight for this place, for each other. He will tell the elders, and they will decide I am not worth the trouble. They have bigger concerns than one outcast." "How can you be sure?" Isaac asked. "Because that is how the clan thinks," Zara explained. "They marked me for death as a formality, as punishment, but actually tracking me down and killing me. That requires resources and warriors they cannot afford to waste, especially now that they know I am not alone and I will not die easily. They will declare me officially dead to the clan and move on." Isaac nodded slowly, accepting her logic. "So we are safe. For now, Zara agreed. "Maybe for longer. Time will tell." They went back inside the cabin and barred the door, both of them still riding the adrenaline of the fight. Isaac checked Zara over more thoroughly, making sure she was not hiding any injuries, and she did the same for him. When they were both satisfied that they were truly all right, they sank down on the floor by the fire, sitting close together. "I thought I was going to lose you," Isaac said quietly, his arm around her shoulders. "When Crag went after you like that, I thought—" "I know," Zara said, leaning into him. "I thought the same when they offered to spare you. I thought for a moment you might actually consider it." Isaac pulled back so he could look at her directly. "Never," he said fiercely. "I would never trade your life for my safety. Never." "I know," Zara said again, and she kissed him, pouring all her fear and relief and love into the contact. Isaac responded with equal intensity, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. "We survived," Isaac said, as if he could not quite believe it. "We survived," Zara echoed. "Together." The word hung between them, full of promise and possibility. Together. It was such a simple word, but it meant everything. It meant they had chosen each other despite all the reasons they should not have. It meant they had fought for each other and won. It meant that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real and lasting. As winter slowly gave way to early spring, Zara and Isaac settled into their new reality. The cabin became truly theirs, not just Isaac's place that Zara was borrowing, but a home they shared. They made repairs where the orcs had damaged the structure, planted a small garden in anticipation of summer, and talked about the future in ways that assumed they would face it together. Zara's shoulder healed completely, leaving behind a scar that she no longer saw as a mark of death, but as a symbol of survival. She had been marked for death, but she had lived anyway. She had been cast out and alone, but she had found Isaac. The scar was a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. One evening in late spring, as they sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Isaac took Zara's hand in his. "I have been thinking," he said carefully. "That is usually dangerous," Zara teased, but her smile was warm. "I want you to stay," Isaac said, his tone more serious than usual. "Not just for now, not just until you figure out what to do next. I want you to stay here with me permanently. I want us to build a life together. I know it will not be easy. I know there will be challenges and dangers and people who will not understand, but I do not care about any of that. I care about you, and I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." Zara felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Are you asking me to marry you?" I do not know if orcs and humans can legally marry, Isaac admitted. And I do not care. Legal or not, formal or not, I want to commit to you. I want to call you my wife and mean it. So yes, I suppose I am asking you to marry me, in whatever way we can make that mean something. Zara was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened since that night she had stumbled into this cabin, more dead than alive. She thought about the kindness Isaac had shown her, the way he had tended her wounds and defended her life. She thought about how he made her laugh, how safe she felt in his arms, how much she loved waking up in the morning knowing he would be there. Yes, she said finally, her voice thick with tears. Yes, I will marry you, in whatever way we can. Yes. Isaac's face broke into a wide smile and he pulled her close, kissing her with a joy that was infectious. We will figure out the details, he said when they came up for air. But we will be together. That is all that matters. They were married 2 weeks later in a ceremony of their own making, standing in the clearing by the cabin with no witnesses except the trees and the sky. They spoke vows they had written themselves, promising to love and protect each other, to face whatever challenges came together, to build a life based on respect and trust, and the kind of love that defied logic and reason. Isaac gave Zara a simple ring he had carved from wood, and she gave him one as well, both of them crafted during the long winter nights when they should have been sleeping. The rings were crude but beautiful in their simplicity, symbols of a commitment that was worth more than any formal ceremony could have made it. I love you, Isaac said as he slipped the ring onto her finger. I love you, Zara echoed, doing the same for him. And just like that, they were married. Husband and wife, human and orc. Two people who should never have met, who should never have fallen in love, who were building something beautiful against all odds. Life settled into a rhythm that was peaceful and deeply satisfying. They worked together to improve the cabin and the surrounding land, building additions and making the place truly comfortable. Isaac taught Zara to read common speech, and she taught him some of the orcish language and customs. They learned to communicate not just in words, but in the silent understanding that came from truly knowing another person. Occasionally, they would make the trip down to the village for supplies, and while they faced some suspicious looks and whispered comments, no one confronted them directly. Isaac was known to the villagers as a decent man and a former soldier, and that reputation afforded them a measure of protection. Zara stayed close to him during these trips, aware that her presence made people uncomfortable, but refusing to hide who or what she was. One day, nearly a year after they had met, a young human woman approached them in the village market. She was holding the hand of a small boy, maybe 6 years old, with bright eyes and a curious expression. "Excuse me," the woman said hesitantly. "Are you the orc woman who lives up on the mountain?" Zara tensed, preparing for hostility or fear, but the woman's expression was open and grateful. "Yes," Zara said carefully, "I am." The woman pushed the boy forward gently. "This is my son, Thomas. I think you saved his life last year. He got lost in the mountains, and he said a green woman gave him water and pointed him home. Was that you?" Zara felt her breath catch as she looked down at the boy. Those eyes. She remembered those eyes, wide and frightened and lost. "Yes," she said quietly. "That was me." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I never got to thank you. Everyone said I was crazy, that an orc would never help a human child, but Thomas insisted. He drew pictures of you, and now here you are." She reached out and took Zara's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for bringing my son back to me." Zara felt her own eyes grow damp. "You are welcome," she said, her voice rough with emotion. "I could not do anything else. He was just a child." The boy, Thomas, stepped forward and looked up at Zara with complete trust. "I told everyone you were nice," he said solemnly, "but they did not believe me. I am glad you are real." "I am glad you made it home safely," Zara said, kneeling down so she was at his level. "Be more careful in the mountains, all right? They can be dangerous." "I will," Thomas promised. He surprised her by giving her a quick hug, then scampered back to his mother's side. The woman smiled through her tears. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, please come find me. My name is Kate Porter, and my family owns the mill just outside the village. You will always be welcome there." As they walked back to the cabin that evening, Isaac took Zara's hand. "That was good," he said simply. "That was really good." "It was," Zara agreed, still processing the encounter. The act that had gotten her cast out from her clan, the mercy that had cost her everything, had been the right thing to do. She knew that now with absolute certainty. And more than that, it had led her here to this life, to this man, to this happiness she had never imagined possible. "Do you regret it?" Isaac asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Everything that happened. Do you ever wish you could go back and make a different choice?" Zara thought about it seriously, giving the question the weight it deserved. She thought about her clan, about the life she had known, about the warrior she had been expected to become. And then she thought about the cabin, about Isaac's smile, about the small kindnesses they shared every day, about the future they were building together. "No," she said finally, absolutely certain. "I do not regret any of it, because it brought me to you." Isaac smiled, that warm, genuine smile that still made her heart skip. "Good," he said, "because I do not regret any of it either." They walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, hands clasped, both of them aware of how lucky they were to have found each other. The path ahead would not be easy. There would always be challenges, always people who did not understand or approve. But they would face those challenges together, just as they had faced everything else. Summer came, full and warm, and with it a sense of abundance. The garden flourished, providing them with fresh vegetables. Isaac's hunting and fishing kept them well fed, and Zara learned to preserve food in the human style, ensuring they would be comfortable through the next winter. They made improvements to the cabin, adding a small porch where they could sit in the evenings and watch the sun set over the mountains. Life was good. Simple, but good. One particularly warm afternoon, as they worked together in the garden, Zara paused to wipe sweat from her forehead and looked at Isaac, who was laughing at something, dirt smudged across his cheek. In that moment, she felt a contentment so profound it almost frightened her. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, noticing her staring. "That I am happy," Zara said simply. "Really, truly happy. I did not think that was possible for me." Isaac set down his tools and came over to her, pulling her into his arms despite their both being sweaty and covered in dirt. "You deserve happiness," he said firmly. "You deserve all of this and more." "So do you," Zara said, kissing him softly. "We deserve each other." "Yes, we do," Isaac agreed, and there was no doubt in his voice, no hesitation. Just certainty. As the seasons cycled and years began to pass, their lives took on the comfortable pattern of a love built to last. They faced difficulties, certainly. There were hard winters and failed crops and occasional hostility from those who disapproved of their union. But there were also good harvests and warm summers, and an ever-growing acceptance from the villagers who came to know them as individuals rather than symbols. Thomas Porter grew from a small boy into a young man, and he never forgot the orc woman who had saved him. He would visit the cabin sometimes, bringing news from the village and gifts from his mother. Other villagers began to stop by as well, at first cautiously, and then with increasing frequency. Zara's knowledge of healing herbs and Isaac's skills as a carpenter made them valuable members of the community, even if that community was slow to fully embrace them. On their 5th anniversary, As they sat on the porch watching another sunset, Isaac turned to Zara with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found this cabin that night?" he asked. Zara considered the question. "I would probably be dead," she said honestly, "or still wandering alone trying to survive. Instead, I found you. I found home." "I am glad you found me," Isaac said softly. "I was so lost before you came. I did not even realize how lonely I was until I was not lonely anymore." "We found each other," Zara corrected, "and we built this together." She gestured to the cabin, to the garden, to the life they had created. It was not grand or impressive by most standards. There were no riches here, no fame, no glory. Just two people who loved each other and had built a life based on that love. But to Zara, it was more valuable than any treasure, more meaningful than any status she could have achieved in her clan. "I prayed that night," Zara said quietly. "The night I found this cabin, I prayed not to die alone in the dark, and someone was listening. Someone sent you to me." "Or sent you to me," Isaac said. "I think maybe we were both lost and we found each other at exactly the right time." Zara leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear, one by one, like promises being kept. "Do you think we will always be this happy?" she asked. "I think we will have our share of troubles," Isaac said realistically. "Life is never simple, but I also think that as long as we face those troubles together, we will be all right. Better than all right, we will be happy." "Together," Zara said, the word that had become their promise to each other. "Together," Isaac echoed and kissed the top of her head. As the years continued to pass, their story became part of the local legend. The orc woman and the human man who had built a life together against all odds. Some still disapproved, still whispered and wondered how such a union could be right. But most came to accept them, to see them as proof that love could bridge even the deepest divides. Children who had been afraid of Zara at first would come to learn from her, fascinated by her stories of the mountains and the skills she could teach them. Isaac became known as a man of honor and integrity, someone who could be counted on to help a neighbor or offer good advice. Together, they became a fixture of the community, respected if not entirely understood. On their 10th anniversary, they stood in the same clearing where they had spoken their vows and renewed them, this time with witnesses. Thomas Porter was there, now a young man with a family of his own. Kate Porter was there with her husband. Several of the villagers who had become friends attended as well. It was a small gathering but a meaningful one, a public acknowledgement of a love that had endured and deepened with time. "I, Isaac Everett, take you, Zara, to be my wife," Isaac said, his voice steady and strong. "I promise to love you, to honor you, to stand beside you in joy and in sorrow, in plenty and in want, for all the days of my life. I, Zara, take you, Isaac Everett, to be my husband," Zara said, her voice equally firm. "I promise to love you, to honor you, to stand beside you through whatever comes, for all the days of my life." They exchanged new rings, these ones made of silver and crafted by a blacksmith in the village. A gift from Kate Porter, a thank you that could never fully be repaid but was offered with love nonetheless. As they kissed to seal their renewed vows, the small crowd cheered, and Zara felt tears of joy run down her face. She had been marked for death by her own clan. She had been cast out, alone and afraid, but she had found an unmarked cabin in the wilderness. She had prayed, and someone had listened. That prayer had led her to Isaac, to love, to a life she had never imagined but would not trade for anything. She had lost everything and gained something so much more valuable. She had found home. She had found family. She had found herself. Years later, when they were old and gray, when the cabin had been expanded and improved countless times, when the garden had grown to feed not just them but their neighbors, when their story had become legend, Isaac and Zara would still sit on that porch and watch the sunset together. They would hold hands, weathered and scarred but still strong, and they would talk about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silence that only comes from decades of shared life. "You remember the night we met?" Isaac would ask, though they both knew the answer. "Every detail," Zara would reply. "You found me half dead on your floor, and instead of throwing me out, you saved my life." "You saved mine too," Isaac would say. "I just did not know I needed saving." And they would sit there as the stars came out, two people who should never have met, who should never have fallen in love, who had built something beautiful and lasting against all odds. Their love had been forbidden, impossible, dangerous. But it had also been real and true and strong enough to weather every storm. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not what they had lost, but what they had found. Not where they had come from, but where they had arrived, together. The cabin still stood, a testament to the power of mercy and kindness and love. And in that cabin lived two souls who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something bright. She had been marked for death by her own clan. She had found an unmarked cabin and prayed. And her prayer had been answered in ways more wonderful than she ever could have imagined. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a promise kept. From desperation to hope, from loneliness to love, from death to life. It was a good ending, the best kind of ending. The kind where two people who deserved happiness finally found it and held on to it and built a life that was worth every struggle it took to get there. And they lived happily ever after, in that cabin in the mountains, where an orc woman and a human man proved that love knows no boundaries, and that sometimes the most impossible things are the ones most worth fighting for.